February of 2018, President Kenyatta officially launched the Affordable Housing Program. This program aimed to provide 500,000 affordable homes by 2022, addressing the growing housing crisis in urban areas. The first major project under the Affordable Housing Program was the Park Road Housing Project in Ngara, Nairobi, which began construction in 2019 and was completed in 2020. The Park Road Ngara project delivered 1,370 units. And by 2022, when President Kenyatta left office, only 13,529 units had been built, far below the 500,000 target, while most of the completed houses were unsold or unaffordable. When President William Ruto took office in 2022, he revamped the Affordable Housing Initiative with the objective to have 1 million affordable housing units across the country by 2027 through constructing 250,000 housing units each year. As of 2024, only a few thousand units have been completed. Kenya has a housing deficit of 2 million units, increasing by 200,000 units annually. The private sector constructs around 49,000 units annually, primarily for the high-income and upper-middle-class housing. This leaves the low-income group significantly underserved, with a major 1,000 units built for them each year. This information does not necessarily mean that you have got a supply problem. Even if the private sector contributes only 49,000 units annually, the issue isn't just the low supply. It's about who can afford the available houses, and the argument that Kenya's housing crisis is a demand problem rather than a supply issue can still stand because of the affordability, mortgage accessibility problem, hierarchy of needs, and informal settlements. The private sector predominantly focuses on high-income and upper-middle-class housing because it's more profitable. Low-income earners, who make up the majority, cannot afford these houses, even when they are available. Even government-built affordable houses cost 1 to 3 million, which is out of reach for many. Additionally, Kenya has a mortgage accessibility challenge, and even if more houses are built, most people don't qualify for loans to buy them. In fact, only 25,000 Kenyans have active mortgages due to the high interest rates of 15 to 18%. In contrast, South Africa has 2 million mortgages, showing that Kenya's problem is more about access to financing than just supply.
Currently, Your Excellency, as you know, commercial banks in Kenya hold only about 26,000 mortgages within a population of over 45 million. This clearly is not tenable for a country that is entering middle income status and aspiring to be an emerging market sooner than later. The low mortgage penetration is because of liability mismatch, where there are more short-term deposits in Kenya that makes long-term lending by commercial banks and SACCOs unattractive.
Furthermore, with the high cost of living in Kenya, saving for a home is unrealistic. Majority of urban dwellers earn 20,000 to 50,000 shillings per month. Many Kenyans prefer renting because it's more affordable and flexible. If supply was the main issue, people would move to available houses, but they don't because those houses are too expensive. Over 60% of Nairobi residents live in slums like Kibera and Mukuru.
Housing at the bottom of the triangle that we are looking at under Article 43, for me at that bottom level, it's a demand issue. It's not a supply issue. Because you can have houses next to Kibera, and probably they're there right now, that are empty, but they can't afford to go into those houses. So it's a demand issue. You will not achieve that demand issue by supplying. It has to be all a different model of not the market and profit model. That will not work for us. We will build, and I've always said, the issue is that we will not build. We will build some houses, but will they be affordable? Personally, I doubt so. Because, as you've said, we are increasing taxes in this environment.
So therefore, what really was the Affordable Housing Program? You see, there was a problem, a challenge, which, as you know, is when a significant portion of the population cannot access safe, adequate, and affordable housing due to economic, social, or policy-related factors. So the government came up with a program, and this program aimed to create a framework where the government, private sector, and citizens will work together to deliver affordable housing. Back then, the strategy was that 1. Private developers will build houses while the government provided land and infrastructure, road, electricity, water. 2. We will have government-backed mortgages, as Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, KMRC, was set up to offer cheaper loans at 5 to 7% interest rates. 3. Buyers will pay for the homes in small installments instead of upfront cash. And 4, a controversial 1.5 salary deduction housing levy to fund the construction was introduced but later blocked by courts in 2019. That was the plan then. The truth is that it is not unique or strange for any government to build housing for its citizens. It is part of their duties. But housing in Kenya is a devolved function which should be undertaken by the county governments. The national government is only responsible for policy formulation on housing and maybe financing large-scale housing programs like the affordable housing. Several countries have implemented successful affordable housing programs that Kenya could learn from, like the Integrated Housing Development Program in Ethiopia, where the government directly builds and sells the houses at subsidized prices. Buyers only pay 10 to 20% upfront, with long-term payment plans for the balance. Private developers are involved, but with strict price controls to keep homes affordable. Over 500,000 affordable homes were delivered in Addis Ababa alone. Instead of public-private partnerships that prioritize profit, Kenya could directly fund and control the housing projects like Ethiopia to ensure affordability. Or in Singapore, where the Housing and Development Board builds subsidized apartments for sale, citizens get low-interest loans of 2 to 3% and long-term repayment periods up to 99-year leases. Mandatory savings through the Central Provident Fund helps finance home purchases. 80% of Singaporeans live in the Housing Development Board flats, making it one of the world's most successful affordable housing programs. Instead of relying on expensive private sector mortgages, Kenya could introduce low-cost government-backed home financing like these Housing and Development Board loans. We also have other housing programs success stories from South Africa, Brazil, and even India. We could draw invaluable insights from models in South Korea, where they successfully tackled its housing crisis through government intervention, mass housing projects, and financing reforms. Today, it has one of the highest home ownership rates, around 60%, in a densely populated country. Get to look at this, then you ask yourself, why is it that ours is the only one that is so bad? It could be because of corruption, bad governance. A recent report by the Auditor General has highlighted significant concerns regarding the Kenyan government's affordable housing program. The report reveals that the government entered into contracts worth approximately 49.5 billion for affordable housing projects without providing the necessary land ownership documents for the sites where these projects are being implemented. The State Department of Housing failed to present land ownership documents for audit verification. This omission raises questions about legal ownership of the land designated for these housing projects. Without clear land ownership records, it is uncertain whether proper structures are in place to issue titles to future homeowners. This situation could lead to disputes and challenges in property ownership for the beneficiaries of the affordable housing program. This is not to mention poor planning, where many projects lack proper infrastructure like roads, water, schools, and hospitals. Risk of land grabs and corruption, the never-ending housing levy controversy, inflated costs where government-backed houses are built at higher than market rates. Some units are priced at over 3.5 million. There is no transparency in the procurements, raising corruption concerns. Developers and contractors, not the ordinary Kenyans, seem to be the biggest beneficiaries. The affordable housing program was meant to solve Kenya's housing crisis, but it has failed to meet its objectives. Corruption, poor planning, lack of proper financing, and inflated costs have made the situation worse. If housing is to be truly affordable, it must serve the people, not just the developers and politicians. Personally, I think Kenya should work on those problems urgently. Instead of forcing workers to contribute 1.5%, create a voluntary savings fund where people can save towards home ownership. Now it's your turn. What's the best solution for Kenya's current and long-term housing challenges? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation going and demand real solutions for Kenya's housing crisis.